All right, we're live. For those of you who have tuned in a little bit early, you got a little bit of the behind-the-scenes look, and maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll let them take a look at the control room and what we do to set all of this up. But Tom Trento, your host here on the 31st of March. March came in like a lion, and looks like it's staying like a lion in terms of the ramifications of what's going on globally, and particularly in the United States of America and in each of your families. And our desire, after we have been on the air quite a while, doing a 1-hour radio show, contemporary show on counterterrorism issues, national security. Well, when the corona hit, because it's so critically important to everyone, we included that in our daily radio show from 11 a.m. East Coast time until 12 o'clock. We broadcast on the radio, commercial radio in South Florida, but on iHeartRadio worldwide, or on the internet worldwide. So we decided, because we have the background, the talent, the resources, the capability to bring a daily Bible study, a serious Bible study, but with a little different nuance, a little different spin to it, to bring that to you. And yesterday I laid out, this is day 2 of the Bible study. We'll be here through this whole deal, helping however we possibly can. And I think in a lot of ways. I laid out a little bit of my background. I'll probably put that up on the United West website, my theological background, so I don't have to go over that in this short amount of time we're together. But I am trained as a Christian apologist, a person who has the knowledge base and skills to defend the truth claims of Christianity. And I include in that the Hebrew Scriptures, what Christians call the Old Testament. Our brothers and sisters who are Jewish people refer to it as the Hebrew Bible. And on the New Testament side, we have the capability to explain what all this stuff means. But beyond that, as an apologist, I have a degree in philosophy of religions philosophy. So we bring the bigger picture, and then we've done a lot of work culturally within our culture. If God exists, and if this Judeo-Christian Bible is true, all questions that I'll answer in the days ahead, then how ought the teaching in those scriptures apply to our lives, and how should that influence the culture in which we live? That's been my job for a lot of years, to make the argument that the Judeo-Christian worldview is the most reasonable in light of any other competing worldview, and in fact, it's the most unique and direct understanding of God communicating to man. It's a big claim, very big claim. Thank God I've been successfully able to argue it for many years on a professional level. So here, we're going to do a little bit of that. We've got to lay the groundwork. If I'm going to ask you to believe something I read in the Bible, I want to lay the groundwork to give you a sense of confidence. Certitude is the word in what we're talking about. So for the next 4 days, I'm going to address the issue of, does God exist, and does God exist in a corona world? And if you think about that, many people historically have avoided a belief in God, or have left their faith because of the issue of, I'll throw some big words out once in a while, because of the issue of theodicy. And simply what that means is, okay, Trento, okay, all you Christians, if God is so good, how does he do evil stuff to people? If God is so good, why did he take my baby at 1 year from a devastating disease of cancer? If God is so good, how can he allow the world to suffer a pandemic, this invisible thing that's just wiping people out all over the globe? Yeah, Trento, tell us about your God if he's so good. It's a legitimate question. It's a big question. It's a question that we've all struggled with at different points of our life. But it's one that I professionally, 35 years ago, started studying. And And if there's any answer that's the most coherent answer, it comes out of the Judeo-Christian worldview. So I'm laying a groundwork. And to put this into a little larger context, those of you who are on our Zoom platform, as you know, we have a sister organization, Sharia Crime Stoppers, and they've been using Zoom to teach once or twice or 3 times a week for the past 2 or 3 years. So we're very familiar with the platform, though we're making an adaptation to our studio here to live stream this Bible study and subsequently our radio show at 11 o'clock. If you want to interact with us on your keyboards to make a comment or ask a question, you have to sign up on the Zoom platform. The way to do that, go to our webpage, theunitedwest.org. That's the name of our organization. We're trying to unite the West. If there ever was a time, ladies and gentlemen, to unite the West against a common enemy, it is right now. The good things can come out of this. Go to our website, theunitedwest.org, and on the right-hand side of the homepage, you'll see a little link to sign up for our Zoom application. We don't ask for a lot. I think your name and email and your bank account and the names of all your children, and then just a little bit of information, name and email, I think it is. And then that opens you up to be able to interact, to participate. I'd like to ask at the outset, we're doing this to assist people out there who are people of faith, whether you have a unquestionable faith in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, whether you're not that far in the spectrum, whether you're a theist, you think God is out there and maybe he's involved, or whether you're an atheist, there is no God. Wherever you are in the spectrum, I'd like to ask, in light of the corona crisis, what are some of the major concerns on your heart right now for you as an individual and for your family? And if you're on our Zoom platform, you can type those in, and Mother Mary in the mothership will get those to us a little later. At 10:50, I'll stop and entertain some of these comments or questions. What are your main concerns? And then also, how could we help you through specifically these times through the presentation of this material? So sign up for Zoom. Also, if you want to, you can go to your smart TVs, your TV, and go to YouTube, download the application YouTube, and search for The United West, theunitedwest.org, and then click on it, and what you see right now on your iPhone or your computer, you can watch on your 60-inch, 50-inch, 30-inch, 90-inch, 100-inch TV. There are 100-inch TVs. And you can sit there and watch this thing in living color, no less. So those are some ways to get involved and to participate, and we appreciate everybody getting involved. But the next 4 days, as I said, I'm going to lay out reasons why a logical person ought to believe in God. Why I'm doing this, very simple, because when I go to the book that I believe God has written, and I can substantiate that, I want you to have trust that that this God that we're asking to inform us intellectually and move us spiritually actually exists. Some people pick up the Bible as a book of poetry, they read it and they get some stuff out of it. When you pick it up as a love letter from God to you personally, don't miss that. When you look at the Bible and you have certitude and confidence that it is indeed a love letter from God to you, it opens up a whole new world of not only who you are, but what God's plan is for each and every individual. You see, the way the world works, God has created each of us for a specific purpose, and he has a plan for our lives. To the degree an individual can align themselves with God's plan for our life, it's to that degree that you are fully actualized, the psychologists tell us. You're made complete. Think about it. Think of a father-son or mother-daughter relationship where the father or mother is trying to lay out a specific life, and maybe not every single job and all of that, though God has that included, but some moral guidelines and some fundamental principles that the parent wants for the child. The parent knows better. It's the same with this love letter, the Bible from God. If he exists, which I haven't established yet, and I know I don't have to establish it for everyone out there, because many of you are Christians, obviously, but to the degree that even Christians can be more secure in knowing why they believe what they believe. I have found in my experience as a Christian, many Christians know what they believe. Well, I believe Jesus resurrected. I believe the Bible's the word. I believe, Jerusalem. I believe. Why do you believe that? That's the hard part. You start with whether or not God exists, and here's the context to that. Now, I'm going to introduce a word that may be new to many of you, and maybe not. The word is metaphysics. Metaphysics. Take a look at this pen right here. This is physical. This is something I'm holding. It's material. It has a nature made up in such a way that you can feel it, you can hold it, you can touch it, you can see it, you can smell it. The senses interact with the physical world. Well, metaphysics, meta is a Greek term that means after. And the philosophers in the Middle Ages and even earlier struggled with whether or not there's two components to reality or just the physical world. If there's just the physical world, then obviously there can be no God, because we can't see God, we can't talk to God, we can't touch God as you would another human being. So the study of metaphysics after the physics brings into the question, is there anything that's real, that actually exists, that we can't see or touch or smell or feel, but really exists? Big question. And the philosophers and theologians through the ages have struggled with this. And the theologians just had to point to a lot of their early scriptures in the Judeo-Christian scriptures and say, well, it's right there that God exists. He's telling us he exists, but you beg the question somewhat that way. Well, Trento, I want you to prove God exists before I read that God exists. Okay, I'm going to lay that out. I'm going to do it by looking at the alternatives. We're going to do a deductive argument right here, and we're going to deduce from the known information what information we can conclude that has certitude and surety that if we place this thing called faith in that new belief, it's not an unfounded faith. And faith, I'll get into faith in the days ahead a lot. Faith is not a leap off a building hoping you can fly, violating the laws of nature. Faith is simply the bridge between what we know intellectually and what we presume to be the conclusion of that knowledge, but it moves into the area of metaphysics, after physics. Faith is that bridge that brings us there. So faith is critically important, but you can have too much faith and you can have a misguided faith. I'll explain all of that. When you come to reality, to metaphysics, is there anything after physics? You come to 2 or 3 options. And the theologians and philosophers have concluded that every human being, everybody out there listening and watching, falls into one of 3 categories. You conclude that matter came to be out of nothing. That matter, all the physical stuff, the wood and the chemicals and the rocks and the water, all of this came out of nothing. Some people believe this. Some very intelligent people believe this, over against their intelligent analysis of the factual information. It's usually a default position because they do not want to believe in God. If you're going to hang with me in this study, you have to open your mind to allow the fact of God existing based upon the evidence that's presented. Is that fair? That's fair. If it's not fair, then you're not playing fair. That's the important part. So there are people that believe that nothing existed. Wrap your head around that. And then something existed. And some people point to the Big Bang, saying, well, the astronomers, astrologists, the physicists, the quantum mechanics, the scientists, they clearly show us that the universe is expanding. It could be measured, and there was a point at which all of this was somewhere, black hole, little tiny dot, whatever, and it exploded. And if you hold that position, even the Big Bang theory, well, where'd the Big Bang come from? Did it come from nothing? Logically, it's impossible to get nothing, to get something out of nothing. Now, I talked about faith a little bit earlier. You need a tremendous amount of faith to believe that the Big Bang came out of nothing. It makes more sense that the Big Bang came from something and then concluded logically. So one of the rules in our Bible study, particularly this week dealing with the existence of God, is you have to hold to the canons of logic. You've got to hold to statements being true unless they can be proven to be wrong logically. Now, moving on to point number 2, where more people are. More people say that that this matter didn't come from nothing, but it existed eternally. That matter existed eternally. Now, I want you to get your head wrapped around eternality. And the way to do that, later on when you're walking outside, getting a breath of fresh air on these days where we're self-quarantined and self-contained, get outside, ladies and gentlemen. You need that. I want you to look up at the sky, and I want you to tell me where it ends. Where does the sky end? I can talk about this for an hour, but I'm just going to introduce it for you as an exercise for our time together tomorrow. Try to figure out where it ends, and you will warp your brain trying to figure out where that ends. And if it ends somewhere, let's say there's a wall somewhere out there, what's on the other side of the wall? These are the issues that philosophers and theologians have struggled with, that I struggled with many years in all of my study. I don't struggle with it anymore because I found a better way of explaining all of this. If you hold to the fact that matter existed eternally, then obviously by default and by design, you cannot believe in God. It's impossible to believe in God to say that matter existed eternally, because there is no metaphysics, there is no supernatural above the natural. There is nothing beyond the physical. There's no place for God to live if you're what's called a pure materialist. Only stuff I can see and touch. I'm an empiricist. I need evidence. God isn't, I can't put him in a laboratory. I can't test him. I can test a pen. I can test wood. I can test fire. I can test smoke. I can test all this stuff. And I can test it to see if it fails. Therefore, scientifically, I've proven matter existed eternally. It's a possible theory. When you go through, and I will in these next few days, the next theory that matter was created by something else that existed eternally, follow me, that matter was brought into existence by something else that existed eternally. Now we have a place for the existence and the continuity of matter, and now we have a place metaphysically for where God lives, in that eternal sphere, that eternal realm. And you go, wait, Trento, wait a minute. You're presupposing that God existed eternally, and the scientist, the materialist, there's many Christian scientists and Jewish scientists that believe in God that aren't pure materialists. The materialist is in the same place you're in. And I would say, absolutely. We're both in the same exact place. We both have a theory. One, matter existed eternally. And my theory, God existed eternally and brought matter into existence. Both need now that element I spoke about earlier, that element of faith. Now you have to put faith in the beginning of one of those theories, And then when you test each theory, and I'll do this in the subsequent days, when you start testing each theory as you would in a courtroom, you will see the theory that matter existed eternally. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, it gets a 5 or a 6. The theory that God existed eternally and brought matter into existence, when you do the tests, which we'll do in subsequent times together, you'll see that that theory gets an 8 or a 9 in terms of logical validity for holding to each one. Both, and this is my point for today, and then if Mother Mary is with us, is Mary with us? If there's any comments or anything, she'll let me know, and we can go from there.
Let us know, because I have to unmute her. And
all right, not yet. So my point for today, does God live in a corona world? Well, first of all, we're going to consider whether or not God even lives, whether he exists. Only two possibilities that make sense. The first one, that matter came from nothing. Logically, that can be devastated, destroyed very, very quickly. The other one, that matter existed eternally, that's essentially the basis for evolution and for what the materialistic scientists call their science. But the third theory, that God existed eternally and brought matter into existence. Therefore, we have that theory best fits the facts that we're going to look at in the subsequent days. For you today, go out, look at the sky, tell me where it ends. If you don't know where it ends, you're dealing with eternality. You're dealing with issues that don't fit in a finite head. If we have a God, then by definition, he's infinite. He's beyond finite. He's bigger than finite. Tell me how you can contain the totality of a supernatural being in a natural brain, in your brain. In your brain that's so hokey pokey that you don't know whether you're coming or going at times. Do you think you could contain the totality of supernatural thinking in the finite nature of ascending yourself to the infinite if you think that way? The humble position is there's going to be, by necessity, because of the finite struggling with the infinite, questions that can't be fully answered using a logical formation to resolve those questions. Does that mean we throw logic away? No. Logic is simply a road that takes us to a gap. That gap, to bridge that gap, is what is called faith. Mile long and 50 miles deep. The theist, I haven't argued for a Christian God yet, I'm just arguing for a God. The theist gap is it eternally. Now, I'm jumping ahead, I'm cheating here. I'm going to read Genesis 1:1 from the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. Pretty simple. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. The Bible presupposes the existence of God. It uses the term in the beginning of what we know as time. If God exists, he exists in non-time. Put that in your head and figure it out. He exists before time and after time. In God's mind, there is no time. But when he brought this world and individuals together, he put them in a time framework. And the Bible, in the first verse, says, in the beginning of time, God created the heavens and the earth. Then he says in verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. The image of God, there's a Latin term called the imago Dei. Imago, image, Dei, God, the image of God. When God created, now all of you going through a corona world right now, and your finances are evaporating in front of you, and your kids are bothering you, and your spouse is giving you a hard time, and you're going stir crazy. I want you to at least hold on to these verses. In the beginning, God created, and he created man, us, man and women, it says there in verse 27, in his own image, a very unique position in the complete universe. You are a special individual. And then, verse 31, God says, God saw that all that he had made, and it was a special relationship with him. Understand that as you go through these difficult days. And that took 6 productively or destructive. Mary, got anything, or should I wrap it up here? I hear nothing.
I hear nothing from Mary. Is she there? She is unmuted. Okay, well, just go.
All right, let me just close this out then. What we want you to do is, for those of you who want to interact, when we get our audio right with Mary, who's in another state, by the way, not a state of mind, but another physical state in the United States of America. We want you to go to theunitedwest.org.
She's still muted.
On the right-hand side, you can sign up for the Zoom platform. And do it fast, man. I don't know how long the servers at Zoom are going to... There may be a place where God lives in this thing called eternity. And for you Christians and God-believing Jewish people and others who believe in God, some very, very difficult days ahead. And to the degree that your trust and faith has grown in the God who created in the beginning and created you in a special way in his image, situation in your life, you're going to become a stronger individual, not only for your own sake, but we'll get Mary back tomorrow. All right, everybody.
You have to refresh your screen because there'll be another video altogether.
Oh, on for everybody?
Yes.
All right, what you'll do, we're going to end these again, and then 11:04, we start our 1-hour show, which is not a Bible study. It's a hardcore, and as a guest later on this morning.
Okay.
All right, that's it. Tom Trento signing off. See you all tomorrow.